So this business requirement document BRD template, which is the best way to use the template to allow for some flexibility and allow individual projects to deviate from the template. So this is a general description of the BRD template, and now we will see the TOC. The main important concept is the TOC, the table of contents. So in the TOC, let us see what are the different sections, section headers they have included. So version control, revision history, which will be the common, and the RACI chart is also common, and the codes used in the RACI chart, and then about the RACI chart. So all these three pages, in the document, all related to the RACI chart. Then the executive summary, overview, background, objectives, requirements, proposed strategy, and next steps. Okay. So this explains who are the executive summaries, and then explaining the overview of the project, and then the background, and then what are the objectives of the project, and then explaining just briefly about the requirements, and then how you are going to propose the strategy, and then explaining the scope, then the usually a RACI chart we will be taking a table. We will have a small table. Let me show you. And we have some business cases where we have business use case and user requirements. In the user requirements, we will have the system use case diagrams, and then security requirements. And now this is related to the testing side, and then reliability, configuration, compatibility. So do you remember one thing about this performance requirements, stress requirements, response time requirements, throughput requirements, usability, security? So do you remember what type of, means all these requirements will fall into which type of category? Means we have discussed about the requirement types of requirements. So all these their requirements will fall into which category? Anyone? Any guess? Exactly. So in fantastic. So in non-functional requirements, means when we are discussing about the functional and non-functional requirements, then in the non-functional requirements, I have shown in the slide, I have shown you a diagram where we will be having different types of requirements, like the performance, the stress, response, and throughput, usability, and the security. So all these will fall into non-functional requirement. Any requirement which is not related to the type of functionality, means here say in the compatibility requirement. So does this requirement is going to explain any functionality? No. Then the security requirements. Does the security requirement will explain any functionality? No. So any type of requirement which does not have the sense of giving the functionality will fall into the category of non-functional requirements. Okay, and then we have the class diagram as an entity class documentation. So the test plan and test job and end user process, everything we will get to know. So version control, I am not supposed to explain. The RACI chart, now I will show you the RACI chart identifies the person who needs to be contacted whenever changes are made to this document. So that is the main purpose of the RACI chart. That is, this chart identifies the persons who needed to be contacted everywhere and the changes are made to this document. So as we discussed, the RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So these are the main codes that appear in the RACI chart. The following describes the full list of codes used in table. So here the codes used in RACI chart are: R is the responsible, means he is responsible for creating the document. A is accountable, accountable for accuracy of this document, and supports. S for supports, provides supporting the services in the production of this document, and C is the consultant, provides input such as interviewee, whereas I is the informed, must be informed if we made any changes. So someone had asked about the RACI chart. So this is the process of preparing a RACI chart. This is a simple way where we will consider only one table. In the table with having the different columns, and abbreviate the abbreviated letters, means in the RACI the first letter R, and then the second letter A, the third letter S. So all this will be acting as the columns. Say for example here the name, if I given the name as John here, John, and then his position is say BA. So now tell me, in the RACI matrix we will be having uh, the attributes will be R stands for responsible. So does the BA is responsible for this for preparing this document? Yes, then we are going to say it as, you can have a small tick mark, or else you can simply use the, but at the time being I'm just giving the word as. Then now coming to the another person, Ram. So he is a project manager. So he is one more thing. Just wait in the first column itself. So John is a BA who is responsible for creating the BRD. Thus he is accountable. Obviously, as he is the person who is going to prepare the document, so he is responsible. Then we need to mark him as Y. And then what is the S? Will he provide services? As he is going to provide services in the document. And will he consulted? So as he is preparing the document, then there is no need of. So let's leave the places blank. And now coming to the project manager. So the project manager is responsible for creating this document? No. Then does the project manager is responsible for accounting? Yes. Because he is going to see whether we have followed the same structure maintained by the company or not, or else whether if needed any new sections, or else any changes in the sections, or else if you want to delete some sections in the group. So he can be he is the suggestible person to discuss and to decide. So that's the reason he has been kept as required person in the accountable section. Whereas in the third column, that is in the S for supports, will he be provide supporting services in the production of the document? Does the project manager is involved in supporting services in production of the document? Yes. And then consulted, will he provide input such as interview? Yes. Even we can ask him for some questions. So do we need to inform of any changes made in the document? Yes. So like this, you need to prepare who are the different stakeholders involved in the project, and then what are their positions, and then their roles. So someone has asked about the question related to the RACI chat. So this is the way, or this is the process of how to prepare the RACI chat. Are you clear on this one?
Naveen, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the person leaves the company or if he's like replaced by someone, do we have to do this process once more? Like how is it done?
Just in the Word document, we will be having a strike off process is there. Just we will strike off that particular line. Say if Ram has been left the
Mean,
company, okay. So this is the roles and responsibilities he handled in this project. So just strike that particular column, and now enter in place of Ram somebody has recruited into the place. So now we are going to enter that new person name, and then what were the positions that he is going to handle in the existing document.
okay.
Or else in some cases, some of the companies what they do is they will just remove the name of the company. That in that document you can't see the person named Ram. But few companies, as they respect the work done by the employees, they will just strike. They will put a strike mark here, strike mark for the complete row, and then the new person is entered after that row, saying that this is the person who had already developed who has already developed or who is involved in the development or creating this template. And the person now you are entering is a new one who is taking the roles of that particular person.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So does your question to the resume chat is clear? I think someone asked about the RACI chat. I don't remember the name exactly. Okay, let's.
Naveen,
Yeah,
this is Avinash.
yeah, Avinash.
When you say chat, I mean, just like when I see the word RACI and you have involved RACI and in the document you can see S also.
Yeah.
So do you think S is not kind of much more important than the other things? That's why
Yeah,
they are not included in the abbreviation?
yeah, exactly. That is just for support. Only for see, for example, if you want to move upstairs, you will put some support. You will place your hand on the side of the wall just for supporting. It doesn't mean that you can't able to stand. You can able to stand, but as you are moving up to the upstairs, so you need some. You have taken some support. Only for that purpose, we have included the S over there. And you can see the acronym of the S. It just stands for supports. Okay?
Okay,
Okay, fine, perfect.
sure. Okay, yeah.
So coming to the executive summary, so here there will be having the to get enough detail for a high level stakeholders and their overview, the business the subsection of the executive summary details, the business objectives addressed by the objects, project and the requirements and the proposed strategy, the next states, and in the scope we will be having. So this is the table. This table is going to represent all the information or else all the topics what we have discussed earlier. Earlier in the sense of see here, they will be having different constraints, the scope included and the impact and then what are the next steps and what is proposed strategy. So it gives a just a single look understanding. So we will explain the business case here. If business use case, if it is new, then what type of desired functionality we need to have, and then what is the existing functionality, and then who are the stakeholders, and then priority. So this is the way you need to list out the total business use cases. So risk analysis. So risk analysis, we will be having four different strategies in performing the risk analysis. First one is avoiding the risk, then mitigating the risk, and then transferring the risk, accepting the risk. So what are this risk? A risk is something you can could affect the success or failure of the project. So while you may not be able to avoid every risk, you can limit each risk's impact on the project by preparing for it beforehand. So we are not sure that our project doesn't occur any type of risks. So instead of that, we need to prepare that there will be some risks and how the risks is going to impact. So we need to prepare for that. So the types of risks, we will be having the technological risk and then the skill risk. So technological risk in the sense of given the abbreviation as the subsection of risk analysis specifies if we have any new technology issues that could affect the project. So these are related to the technological risk. Skill risks specifies the risk of not getting staff with the required expertise to the project. Means if there is a lack of resources, which will cause some delay in the development of the project. And then political risks. If we have any political influences that cause the delay for or which affect the project. So similarly, like business risk, requirement risk, other risk, and then business case. So business case is, it describes the business for the section may contain estimate on cost or benefit return of investment, that is ROA, that is rate of return on investment, and then payback, and then what is the market share, and quantify each cost or benefit to the business strategy. And then in this time section, BRD provides the timetable for the project. So what are the business use cases, business use case diagram, business use case descriptions. So business use cases means documents each to end business process affected by the organization as a business case, if necessary, describing existing workflow of the business use case. Means we need to understand the client current existing business. So then in that existing, when we understand the current existing business, then we are going to understand, going to prepare the business use cases. And then the actors in the sense of the persons who are involved in preparing this document or else who are involved in performing the actions, like we have the people, organization, and other entities. Here is the workers section where we will be having the list and describe the stakeholders who act within the business in carrying out business use cases. And then the other systems, role map, user requirement, system use case diagram, system use case description, and then so the requirements, like special requirements, if list any special requirements or constraints that apply specifically to all the use case, and then non-functional requirements, just about the requirements type. Business rules, explain you how to, then state mission diagrams. This about the diagrams we will look into the UML chapter. And then non-functional requirements. What is the performance requirement? So it describes the requirements relation to the system speed and stress requirement, response time requirement. So this subsection of the performance requirement describes the maximum allowable wait time from the moment the user submits and requests until the system come back with a response. That is, say if you click, you enter the your login credentials, your username and password, and you click on the submit button. Then what the system should do, it should uh, navigate into a web page present in the system. Navigate to some web page. So after entering the credentials and then performing the click on how can we make it? Let's wait for some time. So where are we in discussing about the response time requirement? So response time is nothing but now the user enters his credentials and login on the submit button. So what time he has spent after clicking on the submit button to navigate into the web page present in the system. So this time is going to call as the response time. That is how the system is responded after performing a certain event. Event is nothing but clicking on the button. So this is an event. After performing an event, then at which time or how much time does the system has been taken to respond the user to navigate into the application. Okay, so somebody has asked a question related to how can we make a business use case. So let me give an example. So in your company, for applying the leaves, there is some the leave policy is there. So that is, if you if an employee takes more than 3 leaves and he is unable to attend at the fourth leave, then all the 4 days will be treated as a loss of pay. This is one of our leave policy set for your company. So to explain this leave policy, or else to explain this rule, we will be calling it as a business use case. That is, these are the rules, or these are the process which your business is following. Then for each type of action, we are performing an use case. Yeah. Why for the existing business process systems, in the sense of it is for client existing business. So we can't modify the business of the client. So if he is doing the insurance business, then he is we should not ask him, or else we can't tell him to perform the banking to start a banking company, or else to start some other company. His business remains the same. So in this BRD document, we need to understand the client business, and we are analyzing the business requirements, what we have already done done analyzing in the requirement phase, and we are maintaining that information in the form of a document. We are documenting the business requirements collected from the client. So are you clear now? Okay, fine. So then go for the throughput requirements, usability requirements, security requirements. So for each and every type of requirement, there is only one single line which explains you the exact definition, and business rules, state requirements, structure model, entity class diagram. So this is the important section, class diagrams, entity class. So all this information related to the entity relationship model, or else all the information related to the entity classes, we are going to discuss in the entity relationship model concept, which will be useful for us in preparing the data processing. Okay, and test plan. So just forget about the keywords used in like performance, requirements based testing, conduct system testing, regression testing, stress test, integration test, volume test. All these concepts we are going to check. We are going to discuss in the testing chapter. And finally, the implementation. So this is about the BRD template. So only few things like related to the entity relationship models, and then the testing concepts, and also about the UML diagrams. So apart from this, all the rest of the top sections we have already discussed on them. So once again, try to understand this document by completing this session. And now we will discuss on the next, which is called as the functional requirement document. We will have the second type of requirement document, which is called as the FRD. And let us see what is the difference between the BRD and FRD. So functional requirements document can also be called it as a functional requirement specification, FRS. We can use either of the terminology, whether we can use FRD or FRS. So in the functional requirement document, it's just an formal statement of an application's functional requirements. The developers should agree to provide the capabilities specified, and also the client agrees to find the product satisfactory if it provides the capabilities specified in the FRD. So the developers agree to provide the capability specified means in the business requirement we have collected the information related to the client business, means what client is expecting from us. And now in the functional requirement we are going to explain each and every functionality of the requirement present in the BRD. Means in the BRD only the business perspective is concerned, whereas in functional FRD document we are going to explain in detail about the functionality. And now after getting the information of after checking the requirement and its functionality, does this functionality can be implemented by the technical team or not, or else are we eligible, or we have sufficient technology, or we have sufficient technical persons to implement such type of requirements or not. So that's the reason why the developers need to agree to provide the capabilities. And then the quality is meeting requirements for reason the FRD is the central document in the system development. It is used for the following: for designing and developing the tile application system, and then evaluating the product in all subsequent phases of the life cycle, and determining the success of the project. So these are the three main concerns for using the FRD. I think here there is a spell mistake over there. Design and developing the application system, instead of the, it has been changed the word over there. Okay, and then evaluating the product in all phases of the life cycle. So all subsequent phases of the life cycle is, so do you remember the different phases present in the SDLC? Like we have the analyze phase, design, coding, testing, and then maintenance. So we need to evaluate the product in all these different phases, and then finally determining the success of the project. Then the characteristics of functional requirement document. So it demonstrates that the application provides value to the state in terms of business objectives and business processes. And it contains a complete set of requirements for the application. It leaves no room for anyone to assume anything not stated in the FRD. So remember that point, this point, that there is no room for anyone to say that we have left a particular requirement. That is, we need to cover each and every requirement of its functionality which described in the BRD, which are described in the BRD. It is a solution independent. Solution independent in the sense of, based on this functionality document, based on this functionality FRD document, the solution is going to be generated. That's why it is. That's why we can decide it as a solution independent. And the FRD does not commit the developers to a design. For that reason, any reference to the use of a specific technology is entirely inappropriate in a FRD. Means in the FRD, it doesn't mean that the developers will start working on designing the screens. So functional requirements document should include what are the descriptions of data to be entered into the system, and then the descriptions of operations that need to be performed by each screen, and then the descriptions of workflows performed by the system, and description of system reports and other outputs, and also who can enter the data into the system and how the system meets applicable regulatory requirements. So let us see about each point. So a description of data to be entered into the system. Description of data in the sense of what type of data we need to provide as an input to the application. Say for example, let us see an employee screen. So in an employee screen, what are the total fields that need to have? And for each field, there will be having some purpose. That is, there is the descriptions of the data to be entered into the system should be noted down in the functional requirement. And then the description of operations performed by each screen. So as we discussed that each screen will be having few different operations, like to create a new employee in the system, we should click on the new operation. After entering all the input data, then we need to click on the save button. So the save is one of the operation. Or else if you want to cancel all the data entered in the form, then cancel is one of the operations. So we need to decide what are the different operations which we are going to perform by each screen. Say if it is new, so new is going to perform the description of new is, so it is going to open a new screen for any type of transaction. Similarly, what are the different types of operations, and in each operation you should give a description of that particular operation, and description of workflows performed by the system. So workflows, we already discussed about the workflow is nothing but a sequence. It is a sequential process, happens from one level to the another level, and finally we are going to get a solution. The best example is the leave management system. So in the leave management system, user will raise a leave request, and then the leave request has been forwarded to the approval of the reporting person. Now the reporting person will receive the leave request, and he will be having the options of rejecting or accepting. So once if he accept the leave request, then again an information or message should be forwarded to the employee that your request has been approved. So this is called as a workflow. So we need to describe what are the different workflows performed by the system. Similarly, like who can enter the data into the system. That is, there will be a different users who can use the application. So normally a user can log in into the application, an approver or the supervisor can log in into the application, or else sometimes a manager can log in into the application. So once they log in into the application, then what type of data they can able to see. See, for example, if he is a project manager, he can able to see the dashboards. He doesn't need to have the option of viewing all the screens. By looking at the dashboard itself, he can able to know what's happening internally into the in the system. And now we are going to see the difference between the business and the functional requirements, where the user requirements will also come into the category of business requirements only. So in the business requirements, we'll be having the stakeholder point of view, and we are going to describe the scope of the project, and we are going to describe the business objectives. Whereas when it comes to the user requirements, we will keep in mind of user. That is, in the first, in the business requirements, in the we have chosen the stakeholder as the main identity. He is only keeping the view of only stakeholder, and we are thinking and we are analyzing the things only by keeping the perspective with the help of stakeholder. And then the user requirements means the end user point of view, what is the user goals and what are the user inputs and outputs. Similarly, like functional requirements, we need to do the expected features and functionality of the system, and then operational characteristics of the system. So the first two, the business requirements will be called as the high level requirements, whereas the functional requirements will be somewhat a detailed one. So this diagram is just to understand the differences between the business and the functional diagram. And now this is the comparison between the business requirements and the functional requirements. So business requirements are high level business needs, and then the functional requirements are required to fill the business need. So we will be having different, we'll be having a business need over there, and in order to fulfill this business need, we need to develop some functions. That is called the functions required to fulfill the business need. And what does the business want to do? And here the question is how it should be done. Means in the business BRD document, if you are going to prepare the requirements, then in the functional special requirement documentation, how we are going to implement excuse me, how we are going to implement those requirements, and then connected with the business problem or business opportunity. But here there need to, that business problem or opportunity should be converted into solution when it comes to the functional requirement side. So that's the reason here it's connected with the solution or the software being developed. So for the business problem or the business opportunity, we are developing the solution for it. And then in the business requirements, we will be having the broad and high level, whereas in functional requirements, we are completely specific and detailed. And the BRD document is written from the point of view of the client, whereas in functional requirements, it's been written from the point of view of the system. So these are the few differences between the business requirement and functional requirement. So are you clear till now? Okay, fine then. Okay, fine friends. So I'll share you the functional requirement document template.
So,
Yeah, somebody is asking some question.
Yeah. So basically, the business requirement is from the customer functional requirement is from the developer's point of view.
I didn't
Is that
get your
right? I
question
mean,
exactly.
in simple words,
I didn't get your question exactly.
I'll just type it.
Yeah, it will be better.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just saying that the functional requirement is more from the developer's point of view, right? The software guy's point of view. And the business requirement is from the users and the business owner's point of view, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah. Okay, just confirm.
you said that the comparison between the BRD and FRD. So BRD is keeping in perspective of the business on the business owners, whereas when it comes to the functional requirement document, so it will be acting as a mediator for both the business, both for the client as well as for the technical team which should be developed. You got my point? That is, while preparing this FRD, we need to meet the requirements given by the client. Means when those are called as the business requirements. So we are implement in the FRD. We are providing the functionality of each and every requirement. We are explaining the functionality of each and every requirement given by the client for his business. And while explaining this functionality should be uh, the same should be checked with our technical people whether we can implement this functionality or not, whether do we have the software or do you have the process to implement this technology or not. That is, this will be acting as the middleware in between for the business users and then the technical team. But it's not a document completely related to the technical team. So it is just a combination of both. Are you clear? Okay, fine. So let me share you the functional requirement document spec. So the main important of these three documents is the first one is the BRD. Once if you prepared the BRD very effectively, very thoroughly, we covering all the requirements, all the business scenarios, then the next document is the FRD, which will be very simple. I'll just show you an example. Functional requirement document explain the overview and then the general project description and the assumptions and the availability and the points of contact, the document reference and the data requirements and the operational requirements and then the security, audit trial, data concurrency, recoverability, system availability, fault tolerance, performance, capacity, requirements, traceability matrix. We discussed this RTM matrix in our requirement session. So only these are the sections or only these are the information that you are supposed to provide in the functional requirement document. So go through this functional requirement document and let me know if you have any issues or any queries related to FRD in tomorrow's session. And in tomorrow's session, we are going to discuss the most important document, that is the software requirement specification document. So that document will be having two different formats. One format is that is the general format for all the project methodologies, so all the software methodologies, whereas the second one is only uh, developed specifically or exclusively to only one project methodology. So we will discuss both the two process of the SRS document. in tomorrow's session. Any issues or any doubts or any queries till now with the topics what we have discussed in today's session?